My name is Brock, and this is the Dungeon Master's Toolkit Podcast. Welcome, Aaron. Why don't you tell us about kind of how you got into tabletop RPGs?
Back in high school, me and a bunch of my friends, we would do all kinds of stupid stuff outside and try and, in the nicest way, kill each other as high schoolers do. Then when temperatures went below freezing, one of them got the red box from D&D 4th edition. So first time DM, we had 12 of us. I was one of the players going through the pre-written module and broke the game. It's like, this is actually a lot of fun. So I got the box, I started running 4th edition, got a smaller group, and ran it for a bit, and then just kept on going from there.
So you had 12 people?
12 players, 1 DM. There were potentially going to be more, but they decided, we're just going to hang out and go play video games in the next room.
Yeah, I can imagine that especially for a first-time DM, 12 people, that'd be a lot even for an experienced DM.
I run somewhere between 5 and 7, depending on who's here this week, and 12 just sounds like a nightmare.
And you have a game that kind of a frequent game that you guys play or run?
We run Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I run 2 campaigns. My main campaign is every other Monday. Trade off with another DM. And then I call them my fun group. Well, they're my fun group, or for fun, they're my shit group, which is a bunch of old coworkers. We get together and they try and compete to say who can get me to get pissed off at them the first. And it's a game they have been very good at. So
that's just kind of a throwaway campaign. It's not too serious.
It's one of those. We're here to have fun, and we will have fun. I don't care what mechanics we throw out the window. We're going to have fun.
Sure. And then your other one is maybe a little more on rails, so to say, maybe?
Yes. My serious one is going through. It is naval ship exploration, going place to place, attempting to get whatever information, doing quests, and it's a lot more of a, okay, we're all going to sit down, we're here to play Dungeons and Dragons, let's see what's about to come out.
And you said you started with 4th edition. How was the transition over to 5th?
A brutal transition. 4th edition, it is fairly common to have +4 or 5 weapons at least. 5th edition, that wasn't the case. My first little campaign, I had a 4th level player that had a +2 longsword and some with +3 armor. It's like, ooh, that's a little on the broken side.
And your players have, and as a DM, you've been able to kind of adapt to the rule changes.
It's been a slow process, as it's one of those I will always favor. If I can make you have more fun by giving you something a little bit stronger, that's fine with me. I'll just keep in mind, if I give you something stronger, I'm going to ramp up the monsters as well. So it's
Sure.
kind of a catch-22 of my players are, do I really want this magical helmet? Or do I want to see what's behind the door first?
Yeah, because that could change depending on if they put the helmet on or not. Well, that's kind of a neat, way to look at it as, if sure, we can ramp up the fun stuff, but that also means you're getting challenged harder too.
Oh yeah, it's one of those, you don't have to take it if you don't want to.
So how do you plan your campaigns?
I'm gonna be honest. I do fairly little planning on them. I'll go in, I'll plan out like, here's this location where we're going. Here's a handful of shops, a handful of quests, and then I'll on the fly make a bunch of maps and put several monsters in there, and then I just kind of roll with the punches. I Between the two campaigns I run, I maybe put about 3 or 4 hours in prep work on them. Now that's combined.
Sure. So you're very minimal on your prep. It seems like a lot of well, I've only talked to two other people so far, but both of them also were pretty low on the amount of prep that they did. And do you kind of let your players, like, is it more of a sandbox where you say, your players kind of tell you what direction they're heading in, so you just kind of populate the stuff that's going to be in front of them? Or do you have certain, like, story points that you're trying to hit?
I do a little bit of a mixture. As for my serious group, I gave once they got on their ship and they got started sailing, here is 10 different quest lines that you guys can choose from. Which one would you like to do? And I would tell them that there's a few of these that might be time sensitive, so if you decide not to do that, that adventure might not be along for a while. And as they choose where to go, I'll build the world around where they're at.
Sure.
I do have story things, but it's not like you have to choose to go this way. It's like, if you don't want to go there, you don't have to. Just know that might not be available.
And that, I feel like that kind of makes it feel a little bit more real and dynamic too, then, right? Because those things, like you said, being time sensitive, this person may need help, but if they don't get the help they need, then there's a logical conclusion to that, and then they no longer need help for good, bad, or otherwise. And so when you're giving your players those like 10 quest lines, is it just like a couple sentences that you put together?
At that point, I give them, it's about 2 or 3 lines of, here's the overview of what will be going on in that, perceived by the people that are in it. And then in my notes, I probably have paragraph and a half, maybe two or so, that actually really go in and dive more into it. And once they choose that, I end up coming back and writing and flushing it out a lot more.
Sure, you really build it out once they've kind of picked that direction. And how many players do you have in that campaign?
In my serious campaign, I have 6 players. And then in my fun campaign, I have, goodness, last week I had 2 people. This week I'm expecting 7.
So when you jump between, you've got a decent amount of people, and you have your different sessions. Do you let people kind of drop in and drop out depending on scheduling, or do you try to, like for the serious campaign, do you try to make sure everybody can meet for sure to play through?
My general rule of thumb is that if we have the majority of the group, which is 4 or more players, we will continue on with it, but I will delay story elements of it. And if we have 3 or less players, it's okay, we're going to put this week on pause. We'll pick it up from here next session. And I also leave it up to the players. So say like, well, they know we're about to go into a big story that's tied to one of my characters. She happens to not be there that week. Well, we'll put it on pause and we'll do something else, because if it's linked to your character and you get caught up and are 2 hours late to the session, it's unfair that you miss all of that. So
Oh,
it's
right, especially
mostly.
when it's for them.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll do little side adventures then, kind of like uh, like something, not downtime, but that's the word I'm thinking of. But just like I said, like a side adventure, just to kind of fill that session then.
Oh yeah, we'll either hang out on the boat and talk with the NPCs because I give out NPCs quite a lot. And it's like, well, how about this? It's a sailing ship and you need 20 crew. Here's 15 crew members. You can go talk, hang out with them, play little games. Or if we don't want to play D&D, I'll break out one of my other board games that I have.
Sure. Yeah, I would imagine if you're on a sailing ship, there's always something that can be done, even if it's maybe a little bit less exciting than adventuring, but also still important to, the story, and then you can kind of build out, relationships with crew members and whatnot.
Everyone seems to be enjoying it. They all have their favorites, like, oh, I'm with this person, and they have their own rooms, and a couple of them are now sharing rooms with NPCs, and they have late night talks with them. It's like, I've got to do voices now for these 12 different people. Okay, let's do this.
So, well, I mean, that's good. So your players are buying into your NPCs, obviously. Yeah, so you mentioned voices. Do you do much for voices?
I give it a shot. Some of them are extremely sub average, and then some of them are right around average. And it's one of those, I try and do it to where if I have two NPCs in the one conversation, I'll try and have distinct voices for them. Beyond that, Jake might have Paul's voice or flip back and forth and close enough. And if you
Sure.
need to ask who you're talking to, I can tell you.
Yeah, so just enough to differentiate at least, so that somebody listening can kind of understand. You mentioned, putting together maps and stuff as you are kind of prepping. Do you grab those like online, or are those things that you draw out?
Right now, I am grabbing them online and using a website that one of my players, she is a DM, is her and I share an account on Inkheart. So I draw out my maps on there. And when we are finally able to get back and not have to use TVs so everyone can stay far apart on the setup, I actually have a dry erase board that's plexiglass. I'll just set that over a grid, draw a quick little map on it, set up a few props, and there's your room.
Cool. So obviously right now you're playing online. What is there certain do you use like Roll20 or one of the other tabletop platforms?
And it's kind of a hybrid. I rearranged my living room and I made little shields to where everyone has their own little, I call them mini cubicles that they sit in, where we can all be together but be separated. And then there's a centralized TV sitting on the floor that displays all the maps, and I do all the movements for them. It's kind of a weird thing, but I use Roll20 for that, and they
I
seem
haven't
to enjoy it.
I haven't heard of anybody having a hybrid setup yet, so that's definitely interesting. Your TV on the floor, did you just like take a TV and just kind of prop it up on the floor, or did you kind of build something for it?
I actually, before all of this, I built a table to go in and house everything. Then I had an insert for that table that I could use as a formal dining room table. I just took that insert out, turned it upside down, propped the TV up enough to where I could all cords to the back of it, and that's what we use.
Nice. I've seen those gaming tables online where somebody, basically builds them from scratch, and then they've got the nice monitor in there, and I would love to do that, but I have, zero woodworking skills or tools, so it might be a little ways off for that. I know that for the games that I've played, Roll20 has really helped a lot, and the digital maps are nice. And like you said, when we get back in person, it'd be kind of nice to be able to still leverage that technology, but at the table. That's cool that you've gotten, or that you were able to do that with your setup. Are there things that you've found as a DM that you maybe struggle with?
Coordinating schedules is always the hardest thing. So what I've found is I simply, before the campaign even starts or I send invites, I clear my schedule of it's going to be on this particular day at this time, and I'm going to keep it consistent for there. And it was on my serious group. That's been Monday nights at 6 o'clock. And it's kind of one of those, if you keep it consistent, people will start forming their schedules around it. It's when you skip around, it's like, okay, we're going to run it on Tuesdays, then Thursdays. Have it nice, simple set, and if they can't make it, they can't make it, and just play it by ear.
Yeah, just keeping it on the schedule and saying this is when we're meeting. If you show up, great. If not, that makes a lot of sense. I know I've had issues with variable schedules, and coordinating is definitely very challenging. And you primarily play 5th edition. Have you played any other systems?
I have talked with a few of my players about other systems, but I don't have the time to learn those right now. It's one of those I would like to. As 3.5, I keep taking a look at that and say, oh, maybe, but I don't want to go out and start reading up on all of that. And it's mostly just a time thing, but when I get a chance, 3.5 is next on the list.
Sure. So you're pretty much exclusively exposed to like D&D between 4th edition and 5th edition.
Yep.
What is something that, as a game master or dungeon master, you wish you would have known sooner?
You don't need to put in so much time for prep because your players are going to destroy your plans anyways on accident or sometimes on purpose. They'll just roll with the punches. It'll be fine.
Do you have an example of where you did some prep and your players just completely just threw it out the window?
In my troublesome group that we have fun, there's supposed to be a fairly kind of lowish level where they had to fight 3 cyclopses in an arena at the same time. So I was preparing for a very difficult battle. Our bard jumps in, he casts Hypnotic Pattern, and all 3 of them fail their saves. It's like, huh. So then, right after the fight, I had one of the Cyclopses go up, and my intention was, okay, one-on-one fight. Bard's trying to show off, get the girl, yada yada yada, that whole line, and talk his way out of it, and through some nice rolls, managed to prevent his skull from being crushed in. It's like, all right, I can't be mad. You got me.
So you mentioned rolls, and that made me think of as a DM, when you're rolling, do you roll in the open or do you roll behind a screen?
I roll behind a screen mostly because I keep notes on that screen. So it's not out of I hide my rolls because I'm very vocal about, oh, that's after modifiers, that's this number here, to where they don't know the actual roll, they do know the result of the roll. And there's times when I will take pictures of my dice and it's like, here's the 5th one I've rolled tonight. Take the dice and throw it down the hall. It's like, I'll get that later.
Bad dice. So yeah, you're not one to necessarily fudge rolls. You still roll behind a screen though, just out of convenience for yourself then.
I will fudge them slightly and say like, this is going to kill someone. I will let you survive one more hit than what you're supposed to, but I will kind of nudge, wink, wink, you need to leave. And beyond this is your warning. Good luck.
It's kind of like a soft hit. This may have been fatal, but yeah, your warning shot.
It's like, well, the dice have spoken, and I shot one of my NPCs, did like 50 some odd damage from a ballista, nearly one shot them. It's like, ooh, that's bad.
So if you're playing out of 5th edition, do you do much homebrew, or do you kind of pull everything out of like the monster manual or online resources or whatever?
I tend to pull and tweak. So I will take something and it's like, oh, I like the base of it. I want it to do this, and then I'll modify it to do what I want it to do.
Do you ever have issues with players having like meta knowledge, or is that ever something that's even come up at your table?
One of my players, another DM, has almost the entire monster manual memorized, which is throws a big loop in things. So, which is why I started pulling and tweaking, and some of it is just going in. It's like I'm going to snag this stat block here for this particular monster, describe it as it is, but use a completely different stat block for it.
Sure. So it kind of subverts their expectations a little bit, and oh, I know what this is, but okay, it's acting a little bit differently than maybe I thought it would.
Oh
And
yeah.
it seems like a good way to kind of handle that, especially when you're playing with another DM. If you don't want them to have, you know, extremely specific knowledge on certain monsters or whatever. Are there any specific tools that you use, or books, websites, whatever, that you like to pull from?
Well, I mix between the Tome of Beasts, Mordenkainen's Tomb of Foes for pulling my monsters, and from campaigns I mostly just pull those from video games, and maps wherever I can get a map, I get a map.
There's a lot of places online to just find RPG maps, which is kind of amazing how I almost feel explosive it's been, and maybe the pandemic has helped kind of explode that market as well. But there are just so many places where you can get really high quality maps now. So
Oh yeah.
do you have those just like the actual hard books, or do you use digital copies like on D&D Beyond or anything?
I have all hard books. I do not purchase digital books because there's times I want to pick up a book and throw it at a player. A book is cheaper than a computer.
Oh, that's good. Have you had to throw a book at a player?
No, I use my cheap dice for those. Because I actually go out and I buy extra D20s. I got about a bag of about 70 to 80 just extra D20s, and I can just pick one up and throw one. And it's like, quit doing that.
So you probably are more on the spectrum of like dice hoarder then?
I have enough dice that I can loan out 2 full sets of dice to every player, and then have 4 extra sets on backup that everyone can use before I even start using the dice that I personally use.
So yeah, you are set. And where do you pick up your stuff? Do you grab it online? Do you have a local game store?
A local game store now 4 minutes away from where I work, which is not good for my paycheck, but keeps their doors open.
Yes, always good to support those little shops. I don't, unfortunately, I think the closest one to me is about a half an hour away, and then there's another one that I support somewhat regularly that's about an hour away because they have other board game stuff that I'm also into as well. So a little bit more difficult to get that far. But and how long did you say that you had been DMing for?
Oh goodness. Been DMing mostly kind of serious fixed schedules for going on about 3 years or so now. And then kind of off and on, not as serious, a lot of one shots for goodness, almost 7, 8 years, ballpark in that range.
Sure. So you've been playing for quite a long time then. Um, do you have advice for um, beginner DMs? But then also, so kind of a two-part question. Do you also have advice for veteran DMs?
Beginner DMs, I would definitely say limit your group size. If you have more people who are interested, get another one of your friends to DM half, and then you DM half, and split it up to where you have Group A and Group B, and the dungeon masters can talk back and forth to each other, run the same story in the same setting, and when it needs be, take a player out of one group and flip them back and forth. But definitely limit your group size for new DMs. And then for veteran DMs, I'd say go in and give your players more gold as they're searching things. Because like lots of bandits have gold on them. And from there, go in and make weird, fascinating items that are mostly useless. Like I've got coming up, my players are able to buy a rock from an elemental for next to nothing, with the possibility that they can make their own earth elemental out of it. If it'll work or not, probably not. Is it something fun, interesting that could be talking with a fun shop owner? Yeah. So doesn't always have to be magic items, super useful, and sometimes everyone needs something fun.
Yeah, and sometimes players will grab on to just really weird things that, aren't important anyways. So kind of throwing those items with maybe a little more thought into it, I can see where that would be kind of fun. Have they gotten anywhere with that elemental stone?
That has actually come this week to where they can get that.
Gotcha.
Is that I don't actually my for fun group, they sold that rock to a questionably sane shopkeeper, who then sent it back to their distribution center, and now they're trying to figure out how do I get rid of a rock.
Would you say that, so because you've got your fun group and your more serious group, as a DM, does that help you to kind of flip back and forth between, the serious and the funny?
It helps out tremendously, because I don't need to have massive political intrigues and we can go in and discuss politics for hours and debate on all of that. Sometimes you just want to have a Goliath. It's like, can I use a door as a shield? Why, yes, you can.
Right, I can see where that just if you're too serious all the time, then sometimes you can get a little bored. Or if you're too, trying to keep the high octane, funny going too much, so you can kind of burn out on, either one of those. I can see where that flip flop is going to help to just, as a DM and as a player, just kind of keep your interest so you're not always doing the same thing, week to week. And what made you start doing the fun group? Was it just kind of a natural, you had a serious campaign and then another group that just said, we just really want to have, fun time? Or kind of how did that form?
Well, the core of that it started off as a night paint reset for a week straight. I used to work with 3 of the people in my fun group, and they were curious about D&D, so I would talk to them about it, and they were all interested. It's like, all right then. So I found a handful more people, and we formed a group, and we've been going on there ever since. It's one of those, the more interested they were in it, the more they liked it.
And are your players, it sounds like your players they're really 2 separate groups of people, right?
Yes, I have, at this point, I used to have one player that was in both groups, but now both groups are completely separate.
Sure. So you're really seeing kind of two different groups. Yeah, I was kind of curious if you had a crossover or not.
There was one, but he also, another DM, couldn't maintain running about, goodness, I think he was playing D&D about 4 nights a week or so. So that's a bit much.
Yeah, that's a lot to do just about anything. Do you play in any games?
I am playing in one that I'm actually having to drop out of because it's like, oh, I'm starting to feel the burnout some. It's like, okay, I'll drop out of this particular game and run my 2 games and go from there.
And so, do you prefer to be a DM then?
I prefer to be that because I like to go in and help kind of control and shape the chaos instead of being at the whim of whoever is controlling the chaos.
Sure. I've I find myself when I'm a DM, I want to play, and when I'm a player, I want to
I'm the exact same way.
DM. So, um, I don't have a super frequent group right now, but when we kind of did, um, being able to play in one and then DM for another one, you could kind of pull the ideas back and forth. Like, oh, this group that I'm playing in had some cool ideas, and I'm going to bring that to my game. And then, you know, one of my players did something that was kind of neat. I'll maybe think about that when I'm playing in the other group. You said that your prep is pretty low. Um, how do you how do you do your prep? Like, do you like write it down in like a notebook? Do you do it online somewhere?
I do it in kind of a hybrid. I have 3 notebooks that I bounce back and forth between. I have my personal secret planning notebook that I keep stashed. That I go in, I write out things, I write out big overarching stories. Then I've got a campaign notebook for each campaign that I've got separate sessions and then Google Docs. So I typically will write it out in my notebook, just rough ideas, put it up into my Google Docs, and then I'll access it as needed and whatever I need to make changes to, keep notes of. I've got my individual campaign notebooks for.
And when you're running those sessions, are you just writing notes just straight into those notebooks?
Straight into the notebook.
Sure, and then you can kind of save those online after the fact. Are there any other like specific tools or anything that you use like at the table?
I have a app on my phone that I can use to access spells because I've been starting to use more spellcasters and I don't know what all the spells do off the top of my head all the times. So I sometimes will pull up my phone, type in a spell real quick, and say, "Oh yeah, that's what it does."
Yeah, the internet is very helpful for that as well. If just you need to know one specific thing, like right now, you can get to it pretty quick.
Yeah, because normally at my table we try and keep it to where there's a minimal use of electronics, so that way everyone's more focused in on the game, and it works pretty well. And there's people who are my spellcasters; they do the same thing I do. And I also go in for my prep work. This is takes up a big chunk of time whenever I level them up. I actually have printed out on papers. Oh, excuse me. What all your spells are, what their level is, how much damage they do, then all your class and racial abilities. To where I basically take the player's handbook, for lack of better terms, snip out what they need, put that on one paper so you have a quick reference guide to, oh yeah, my sneak attack is 4d6.
Sure. So, and then are they playing with actual like printed character sheets?
Yes, I have physical printed off character sheets on aged paper that I bought off Amazon to help with the immersion.
If you could send me a link to that aged paper, I would like to check that out. That sounds pretty cool. I've not seen
I
that.
will. Oh yeah, as you can go full nerd and actually, as how I made invites is I printed off the old paper, put it in a matching envelope, and then wax sealed it, and went in and hand delivered all of those to everyone. This is your D&D invite.
It's like getting your Hogwarts letter.
Yeah, pretty much.
And did you get your wax seal online too then?
I bought that from Michael's Hobby Lobby, wherever I went that day.
Oh, I didn't even know that you could buy those there. I guess I know what I'm going to be looking for the next time I'm at the Hobby Lobby.
And they're great for, you could say like, oh, you stumble upon a letter carrier and he's carrying a letter. This is what it says, or it's like, here's what the letter says, and just hand them that. It's like the immersion, cool nerdness factor jumps.
I was just going to say having a, like you said, instead of just, reading from your notebook or whatever, having a player actually, effectively open it and just basically start role playing, reading the letter, whether they're doing it in a voice or not, would just be, as a player, I feel like that would just be an awesome moment. Do you have any other like physical props or anything that you use for like handouts or anything?
For items, I have little cutouts to where I'll put a picture of the item on one side, and then on the other side, I'll put the physical attributes of it. Like, let me grab one of them for one of the cities my players went to. They had the chance to buy a mini shield wristwatch magical item. Very basic. It allows you to have a shield that grants you 1 AC, and you could still use two-handed weapons. It's kind of busted, but it's one of those, they were having fun. And one of their favorite things on it is I actually have a note on the item itself. It tells time correctly twice a day.
Only twice?
Yeah, it's a broken clock.
Oh, that's funny.
Just little flavored like that, and it's something to where this is serious. This is an awesome item, but at the same time, whenever you take a look at that, like, my Terry's Trousers wristwatch saved me on the time that it actually said it saved me.
And do you print those on that like aged paper too?
I print those on boring white paper. Aged paper is a little bit expensive for frequent cutouts like that, so
Sure. Oh, that is really cool to have the handouts and the letters. For sure, for in-person games, that would just really spike the immersion. And you said that you try to keep the use of electronics down. Is that kind of just a shared philosophy that your group has?
that's one that I brought along over the top with them, to where it's, because one thing that I get annoyed with is it's your turn and you were playing on your phone. I have to go in and re-describe the scene to you. So if I can avoid that, we're all here. The game goes faster. Everyone's happier. Everyone's having a good game. And since they've all tried it, I've not heard feedback on that anyone hasn't liked it. Well, people do use their phones sometimes, like looking up spells, or I got a quick text, or one of my players, his kid calls them. And they do those, but other than that, we're all here. Let's play.
Right, just to kind of keep the session a little bit more focused. That makes a lot of sense. I'm sure most people or most DMs have been in a position where where somebody is not paying attention or something, and then it's like, oh, yep, now I got to redescribe. It impacts this player over here. But how long do your sessions typically go?
My goal is that everyone arrives or so. Sometimes it's a little bit late. We talk for a little bit before. Actual gameplay will start up, go for about 2.5, 3 hours or so. Try and end it around 9:30 at the latest and go from there.
And do you, when you're doing your games, do you try to find like a specific, like finish up an encounter and then stop it there, or do you just kind of hit like, okay, it's like 9:30, we're just gonna cut it like regardless of if we're in the middle of something? What's kind of your go-to there?
It's mostly play it by ear, and I try and at least start winding it down by 9 o'clock. And if it goes over a little bit and all the players are having fun, we'll go a little bit later, but I try and have a hard cutoff at 9:30.
Sure. So your kind of soft deadline is we're gonna be done at 9, and then whatever extra time it takes to kind of just wrap up, that's your 9 to 9:30 time. That makes sense. Is there anything, any experiences or just anything that you wanna chat about?
If you want to have some fun and maybe bring some new people in, run a one shot. I try and run here, just so that way it's like, well, person A isn't sure if they want to commit to all the time. Here's a little sample of how we can try it out. And if they, my groups are full at the moment, but hey, if we need a spot, or here's where you can go to find groups, and it's more of your first sample's on me, and then it's pay to play after that.
I've had some success with a one shot to say, I had some friends that were like, I don't, we've never played an RPG before. We're not really sure if that's something that we would enjoy or not. So say,
Hmm.
here, well, we'll put together this one shot. It'll be, maybe one session or maybe two sessions, depending on how far we get. And then if you guys love it, then we'll figure out how to do a longer campaign. If you just don't like it or whatever, or just not as into it, then it was just a one shot and we had fun for 2 nights. And um, they took a lot longer in the one shot than I expected, and we're still waiting to get the second session scheduled. But they had just a blast. It is two people coming, completely new to RPGs, or tabletop RPGs at least. So
Hmm.
definitely understand kind of that perspective, just to get people interested with very low commitment on their end. When you do one shots like that, or one shots in general, do you give your players pre-made characters?
I offer it to them. It's either because I use for one shots. Here's a fixed array that you can use. Here's some basic rules for making your characters. And if you don't want to make your own character, you're not sure how to, just come talk to me. I'll get some ideas and I'll make you a character.
Sure.
Usually for new players, it's here's a fighter, here's a barbarian or a monk. I make it relatively simple martial classes just for a taste.
That makes sense. I know when I've done those, I typically will, if you got, say, 3 people, you make up like 5 characters. So everybody's got, there's always going to be a couple extra so that it's not like, oh, I really wanted to be that character, but somebody else took, that sheet. There's a little bit of options there, but then they can be like, oh, being a wizard sounds cool, or whatever.
Hmm.
That's neat that you either let them build a character, or um, just grab one as needed as well.
And
I think. Oh, go ahead.
I've got hundreds of players that not NPCs, hundreds of characters that I've made. Just like, yeah, what do you want? I've got something already in my back pocket for that.
That's probably like the curse as a DM, right? Is that it's constantly coming up with character concepts.
Yep.
When you play, do you find it hard to narrow down and pick one?
When I play for fun. I find the most obscure combination I can think of and throw it together. Like the campaign I'm playing in now, I am a monk barbarian. who's doesn't really work well at all. But I'm here, I'm having fun, and good luck killing me.
Yeah, I would assume that a barbarian monk would be very martial oriented and very difficult to put down.
Mm-hmm. Just take Pact to the Bear, and I want to be mad and go punch things. That's the entire premise of this character.
So not optimized by any means. Well, maybe optimized to survive at the very least.
Yep, and that's all I want to do. So I want to pick one very niche little thing that I will be very good at, that one little niche thing. Everything else, the rest of the group can take care of that.
And do the other players, or so either in that campaign or in your current campaigns, do they like to min-max or do like specific builds, or what's kind of their interest in their characters?
I have a couple of players that try and min-max. I've got a couple that are kind of a mixture. It comes down more to the individual player. I definitely tend to reward more the people who, I'm not trying to break the game, I'm trying to have a little bit of fun, so that way they can catch up in power level to the min-maxers, and then go from there.
Sure, because yeah, really depending on how you put together a build, I mean, you can really not necessarily break the game, but you can be very good at things with also not having major downsides either. Yeah, and then your way of solving that is just helping those other players kind of catch up versus penalizing the min-maxers, basically.
Yep, I don't like to penalize people, I like to reward others. That's how I go at it.
But as a DM, I mean, that seems like a pretty good... as the DM, your job is to push them along and push the story along. So if you're constantly coming down on your players, that may get to be not a lot of fun for them. Well, awesome. I don't think I have any other questions, but it was really great having you on, Aaron.
Anytime.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Dungeon Master's Toolkit podcast. You can find links to all of the products and resources that we talked about on the show in the show notes. And if you'd like to join the community or find out how to be on the show, check out our subreddit or join us in our Discord server.